They only want you more telepathic conversation to become their one priority. What if I told you that at this very moment, the person you desire is not as far away as they seem? What if the distance between you and the relationship you want is not measured in miles, circumstances, or time, but in belief? Most people spend their days wondering, worrying, and waiting. They ask questions like, why haven't they called? Are they thinking about someone else? Will they ever choose me? But tonight, I want to challenge everything you've been taught about love, attraction, and connection, because the truth is this: the moment you stop seeing yourself as an option and start seeing yourself as the choice, your entire reality begins to shift. The moment you stop chasing and start embodying the feeling of being wanted, valued, and prioritized, you enter a completely different state of consciousness. And from that state, everything changes. You see, every great love story begins long before two people meet, reconnect, or commit. It begins in the unseen world of thoughts, assumptions, and inner conversations. The words you repeatedly speak in your mind become the script your subconscious accepts as reality. If your inner dialogue is filled with doubt, fear, and insecurity, those emotions become the lens through which you experience your relationships. But if your inner dialogue is filled with certainty, confidence, and expectation, you start creating a completely different experience. Tonight, I invite you to imagine something bold. Imagine that you are already the person they think about before they go to sleep. Imagine that your name naturally comes to their mind throughout the day. Imagine that you are no longer competing for attention because, in their heart and mind, you already hold a special place. How would you feel? How would you think? How would you carry yourself if you knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that you were deeply desired and impossible to replace? This is not about forcing anyone. This is not about manipulation. This is about transforming yourself. It is about becoming the version of you who naturally expects love, receives attention, and experiences being chosen, because the outer world is often a mirror reflecting the assumptions you consistently hold within. So tonight, let go of the old story. Release the fear of rejection. Release the need to chase, beg, or convince. For the next few moments, allow yourself to step into a new identity, an identity where you are unforgettable, magnetic, and deeply cherished. An identity where you are not wondering if they want you. An identity where you already know, because when you change the conversation within, you change the reality around you. And by the end of this message, you may discover that the person you have been waiting for to choose you has been waiting for one thing all along: for you to choose yourself first. You become their priority in consciousness. First, before anyone can become a major part of your physical reality, they must first become a major part of your inner reality. This is one of the most overlooked principles of manifestation and personal transformation. Most people believe that their feelings should be based on what they see. They think they should feel loved after receiving a text message, feel important after being chosen, or feel secure after seeing proof that someone cares. But the truth is that lasting change rarely begins in the outer world. It begins within consciousness. Every experience you have with another person is influenced by the assumptions you carry about yourself and about them. If deep inside you believe that you are difficult to love, easy to replace, or not important enough, those beliefs quietly shape your expectations. You begin looking for evidence that confirms those ideas. You notice delays, silence, and uncertainty more than affection, interest, or commitment. Your mind becomes trained to search for what is wrong rather than what is possible. As a result, you unknowingly reinforce the very reality you want to escape. The moment you understand that consciousness comes first, everything changes. Instead of asking, why am I not their priority, you begin asking, what am I assuming about myself that creates this experience? This shift is powerful because it places the focus back where it belongs, on your inner world. The person who constantly worries about being forgotten is often living from the assumption that they are forgettable. The person who fears abandonment is often carrying the belief that people leave. The person who doubts their value is usually expecting disappointment before it even arrives. Those summons are not punishments. They are simply patterns of thought that have been repeated so often that they feel true. But what feels true is not always reality. It is often just familiarity. Imagine waking up tomorrow with the complete conviction that you are important, memorable, and deeply appreciated. Imagine carrying yourself through the day with the certainty that your presence matters. You would think differently. You would react differently. You would stop analyzing every little detail and searching for hidden meanings. You would no longer measure your worth by someone's response time or level of attention. Why? Because your value would already be established within you. When you know who you are, you stop needing the world to constantly remind you. This is where the telepathic conversation begins. The conversation is not about forcing thoughts into another person's mind. It is about changing the conversation happening within your own consciousness. Instead of hearing an inner voice that says, they are losing interest, you begin hearing a different voice. You hear, they enjoy talking to me. They think about me often. My presence brings joy into their life. Instead of imagining rejection, you imagine appreciation. Instead of replaying fears, you rehearse fulfillment. Over time, these new assumptions begin to feel natural. And what feels natural becomes your dominant state. The subconscious mind accepts what is repeatedly impressed upon it. It does not carefully analyze every statement. It responds to repetition, emotion, and belief. This means that every day you are either strengthening a story of separation or a story of connection. Every inner conversation is contributing to one reality or another. If you spend hours imagining what could go wrong, your emotional state reflects that fear. If you spend time imagining what could go right, your emotional state begins reflecting confidence and expectation. The outer world often mirrors the state that has become dominant within. Many people attempt to become someone else's priority while secretly feeling like an option. They want commitment while expecting inconsistency. They desire affection while fearing rejection. These conflicting states create inner tension. The solution is not to force the external world to change. The solution is to become internally aligned with the experience you desire. If you wish to be valued, practice valuing yourself. If you wish to be remembered, begin seeing yourself as unforgettable. If you wish to be chosen, stop identifying as someone who must compete for love. The most magnetic people are not necessarily the most attractive, wealthy, or successful. They are often the people who possess certainty. They know their worth. They trust their value. They move through life with the quiet confidence that they matter. This confidence is attractive because it is rooted in self-recognition rather than external approval. When you establish your value in consciousness first, you stop chasing validation. You stop seeking constant reassurance. You stop handing your power to circumstances. Instead, you become the source of your own security. As you continue this journey, remember this powerful truth. You do not become someone's priority by obsessing over them. You become someone's priority by transforming the way you see yourself. The relationship you have with your own consciousness sets the tone for every relationship you experience. When you begin seeing yourself as worthy, loved, important, and unforgettable, you create a foundation upon which new experiences can be built. The outer world may take time to rearrange itself, but the transformation begins the moment your inner conversation changes. And once you become the priority in your own mind, you naturally begin occupying a more important place in the minds of others as well. Telepathic communication through assumption. One of the most powerful truths you can discover is that people often respond not only to your words and actions, but also to the energy, expectations, and assumptions you consistently hold about yourself and your relationships. Most people unknowingly communicate fear long before they ever send a message, make a phone call, or have a conversation. They communicate it through their inner dialogue. They spend hours wondering why someone is distant, why a text has not arrived, or whether another person is losing interest. As these thoughts repeat day after day, they create an emotional atmosphere of uncertainty. That uncertainty begins to shape how they show up in the relationship. They become anxious, reactive, and overly focused on what is missing, yet the very thing they desire most. Connection, affection, and attention often moves further away because they are mentally living in a state of lack rather than fulfillment. Telepathic communication, in the context of manifestation, is not about controlling another person's mind. It is about understanding that your dominant assumptions influence your perception, your behavior, and the energy you bring into every interaction. When you constantly assume that someone values you, appreciates you, and enjoys your presence, you naturally begin acting from a place of confidence instead of insecurity. You stop chasing because you no longer feel abandoned. You stop forcing because you no longer feel powerless. You stop questioning every little detail because you trust the reality you are creating within yourself. This inner shift is often what creates noticeable changes in the way relationships unfold. Think about how different your daily experience would be if you truly believed that you were already important to the person you care about. Imagine waking up every morning with the assumption that they enjoy thinking about you. Imagine feeling completely secure in the knowledge that your connection is growing stronger every day. You would not spend your time searching for signs. You would not be constantly checking for evidence. You would not allow temporary circumstances to determine your emotional state. Instead, you would carry yourself with calm certainty. That certainty is powerful because it changes the way you think, speak, and respond to life. The human mind is always communicating something. Even when you are silent, your assumptions are speaking. Every thought you repeatedly entertain becomes a message that you send to your subconscious mind. If the message is, I am ignored, your subconscious begins treating that as reality. If the message is, I am deeply appreciated and remembered, your subconscious begins organizing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors around that belief. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is currently visible and what is repeatedly imagined. It responds to what feels real. That is why your inner conversations matter so much. They are not meaningless fantasies. They are rehearsals for future experiences. Many people spend years rehearsing disappointment without realizing it. They imagine arguments that have not happened. They prepare for rejection that has not occurred. They expect abandonment before there is any evidence of it. Then they wonder why their emotional life feels heavy and exhausting. The solution is not to suppress thoughts or pretend that challenges do not exist. The solution is to consciously choose assumptions that support the reality you want to experience. Instead of mentally hearing, they are losing interest, begin hearing, they enjoy having me in their life. Instead of repeating, I am not enough, replace it with, I am valuable, memorable, and deeply appreciated. These assumptions gradually become your new normal. One of the most effective practices is to create loving inner conversations. Imagine hearing the words you want to hear. Imagine someone telling you how much they appreciate you, how much they enjoy your presence, and how naturally drawn they feel toward you. Allow yourself to experience the emotions associated with those conversations. Feel the comfort, confidence, and security they create. The goal is not to escape reality, but to train your mind to live from the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When your emotional state changes, your perception changes. When your perception changes, your behavior changes. And when your behavior changes, your experiences often begin changing as well. The greatest benefit of this practice is not that it changes another person. The greatest benefit is that it changes you. It frees you from desperation. It releases you from the exhausting habit of seeking validation from outside sources. It teaches you to generate feelings of worthiness, confidence, and love from within. Once you begin doing that, you become less dependent on circumstances and more connected to your own power. You realize that your happiness does not need to wait for a text message, a phone call, or a particular outcome. It can exist now. As you continue this journey, remember that assumptions are seeds. Every thought you nurture eventually influences the garden of your life. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and insecurity, those are the experiences that tend to grow. But if you plant seeds of confidence, appreciation, and certainty, you create conditions for entirely different experiences to emerge. Telepathic communication through assumption begins with choosing the story you tell yourself every day. Choose a story in which you are valued. Choose a story in which you are remembered. Choose a story in which you are already worthy of the love, attention, and connection you desire. When that story becomes your dominant belief, you begin living as the person who naturally expects wonderful things to happen. And that expectation alone can transform your entire reality. Stop competing with others. One of the greatest obstacles to becoming someone's number one priority is the belief that you are competing with other people for love, attention, affection, or significance. The moment you see yourself as a competitor in a race for someone's heart, you unconsciously place yourself in a position of lack. You begin acting as though love is limited, as though attention is scarce, and as though your value depends on outperforming someone else. This mindset creates anxiety, insecurity, and constant comparison. Instead of recognizing your unique worth, you become focused on measuring yourself against others. You start wondering if someone is more attractive, more interesting, more successful, or more desirable than you. The more you compare, the more you diminish your own power. The more you focus on others, the less attention you give to developing the confidence and self-concept that naturally make you magnetic. The truth is that no one can replace what makes you uniquely you. There has never been another person with your exact combination of experiences, personality, perspective, energy, and presence. Yet many people spend so much time looking at what others have that they completely overlook the value they already possess. They assume that if they could only be more like someone else, they would finally receive the love and attention they desire. But genuine confidence is not built by becoming someone else. It is built by fully accepting and appreciating who you already are. The people who appear most attractive and influential are often not those who are perfect. They are those who have stopped apologizing for their individuality and started embracing it. When you believe you are in competition, every situation becomes a threat. If the person you care about talks to someone else, you become worried. If they spend time with other people, you become anxious. If they do not immediately respond to a message, your mind begins creating stories of rejection and replacement. This constant state of comparison drains your energy and weakens your confidence. Instead of enjoying your life, you become trapped in a cycle of fear and overthinking. You begin reacting to circumstances rather than creating them. You hand your emotional well-being over to external events and allow them to determine how you feel about yourself. The powerful shift occurs when you realize that your value is not determined by anyone else's presence. Another person's attractiveness does not reduce yours. Another person's success does not diminish your potential. Another person's qualities do not take away from your uniqueness. Life is not a competition for worthiness. Worthiness is your natural state. Once you understand this, you stop looking over your shoulder. You stop measuring yourself against others. You stop assuming that someone else has something you lack. Instead, you begin focusing on becoming the best version of yourself. This change in perspective has a profound effect on your relationships. When you no longer see others as competition, you stop operating from fear. You stop trying to earn love through perfection. You stop attempting to prove your value. You become more relaxed, more authentic, and more confident. There is something incredibly attractive about a person who knows their worth without needing constant validation. They do not enter a room wondering if they are enough. They enter a room knowing they are enough. They do not obsess over who might replace them because they understand that their value comes from within, not from comparison. Many people unknowingly create distance in relationships because they are constantly worried about losing someone. Their fear causes them to become controlling, needy, or emotionally dependent. They seek reassurance again and again because they do not trust their own value. But when you stop competing, you stop fearing loss. You begin understanding that what is meant for you does not require endless struggle. You trust yourself more. You trust life more, action and the connection more. This trust creates a sense of peace that allows relationships to develop naturally rather than through pressure and fear. Imagine how different your life would feel if you truly believed that you were irreplaceable, not because you are better than anyone else, but because you are uniquely yourself. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that there is no need to compete for attention because your worth is already established. Imagine carrying yourself with the quiet confidence that comes from self-acceptance. You would think differently. You would speak differently. You would make decisions from confidence instead of insecurity. Most importantly, you would stop chasing validation and start embodying the qualities that naturally attract respect and appreciation. The reality is that people are drawn to those who value themselves. They are attracted to confidence, authenticity, and emotional stability. When you stop comparing yourself to others, you free up enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy. That energy can then be invested in your own growth, happiness, and fulfillment. You become more focused on creating a beautiful life rather than monitoring someone else's. You become more interested in expressing your gifts than competing for approval. As a result, your presence becomes stronger and more magnetic. As you continue this journey, remember that the moment you stop competing, you start winning. Not because someone else loses, but because you finally recognize your own value. You no longer need to fight for attention, chase affection, or compare yourself to others. You understand that your uniqueness is your greatest strength. You realize that the love and appreciation you seek begin with the way you see yourself. When you embrace your worth completely, you step into a state of confidence that naturally transforms every relationship in your life. And from that state, becoming someone's priority is no longer something you desperately seek. It becomes a natural reflection of the value you already know you possess. Speak to them in your mind as if it is already done. One of the most transformative practices you can adopt is learning to speak to the person you desire in your imagination as though your wish has already been fulfilled. Most people use their imagination to rehearse what they fear rather than what they want. They imagine being ignored, rejected, forgotten, or replaced. They replay painful memories and create negative scenarios that have not even happened. Without realizing it, they spend their mental energy strengthening the very experiences they wish to avoid. The mind does not always distinguish between an event that is physically happening and one that is vividly imagined. That is why your inner conversations are so important. They are shaping your emotional state, influencing your assumptions, and determining the story you continuously tell yourself about your relationships. Think about how much time the average person spends talking to others in their mind. Before a conversation takes place, they imagine it. After it ends, they replay it. They create entire dialogues while driving, walking, working, or lying in bed at night. These inner conversations become so habitual that many people do not even notice them. Yet these conversations reveal exactly what they believe. If your mental conversations are filled with worry, criticism, and doubt, they reflect a state of insecurity. If they are filled with appreciation, affection, and confidence, they reflect a state of fulfillment. The quality of your inner dialogue often determines the quality of your emotional experience. When you begin speaking to someone in your imagination, as if everything is already working out, you shift from longing to possession. Instead of mentally hearing, "Why are they not texting me?" you hear, "I love talking to you. I always enjoy hearing from you." Instead of imagining excuses, distance, and uncertainty, you imagine closeness, affection, and appreciation. You create scenes in which the relationship already exists in the way you desire. You hear the words you want to hear. You feel the emotions you want to experience. You stop mentally arguing for limitations and begin mentally rehearsing success. This practice is powerful because it changes your dominant emotional state. Most people wait for circumstances to make them feel happy, secure, or loved. They believe they need external proof before they can relax and enjoy life. But when you engage in intentional inner conversations, you generate those feelings from within. You begin feeling chosen before you see evidence. You begin feeling appreciated before anyone confirms it. You begin feeling loved before circumstances appear to justify it. This does not mean you ignore reality. It means you stop allowing temporary appearances to dictate your inner state. One reason this technique is so effective is that the subconscious mind responds strongly to repetition and emotion. Every time you imagine a loving conversation and genuinely feel its reality, you are impressing a new idea upon your subconscious. You are teaching yourself a new expectation. Over time, what once felt unrealistic begins to feel natural. What once felt distant begins to feel possible. The mind gradually accepts the new story as familiar, and familiarity is one of the foundations of belief. Imagine lying down at night and hearing the person you care about telling you how much they value your presence. Imagine them expressing gratitude for having you in their life. Imagine them saying that you are important, appreciated, and unforgettable. Hear their voice as clearly as possible. Feel the emotions these words create. Do not force it. Do not strain. Simply allow yourself to experience the scene as though it is happening right now. The goal is not to convince another person of anything. The goal is to convince yourself that the reality you desire is available to you. Many people struggle because they continue having conversations in their minds that contradict their desires. They spend a few minutes imagining success and then spend the rest of the day imagining failure. They affirm love but secretly expect rejection. They visualize connection but constantly anticipate disappointment. The subconscious responds to the state that is most consistently maintained. That is why persistence is important. The more often to empowering inner conversations, the more natural they become. Eventually, they replace the old patterns of fear and uncertainty. Another benefit of this practice is that it changes how you show up in the world. When your inner conversations are loving and supportive, you become calmer and more confident. You stop chasing because you no longer feel deprived. You stop overanalyzing because you trust the process. You stop reacting to every circumstance because your inner reality has become stronger than temporary appearances. This confidence influences your behavior, your communication, and the energy you bring into every interaction. People often respond differently when you stop approaching relationships from a place of need and start approaching them from a place of fulfillment. As you move forward, remember that your imagination is not your enemy. It is one of the most powerful creative tools you possess. Every great achievement, relationship, and transformation begins as an idea before it becomes an experience. By speaking to the person you desire in your mind as if it is already done, you are training yourself to live from the end result rather than constantly longing for it. You are choosing faith over fear, confidence over doubt, and possibility over limitation. The conversations you have within become the foundation upon which new experiences are built. And when you consistently hear the story you want to live, believe the reality you want to experience, and feel the emotions associated with fulfillment, you gradually become the version of yourself for whom that reality feels completely natural. That is the true power of speaking as if it is already done. Live from the end of being chosen. The final and perhaps most powerful principle is learning to live from the end of being chosen. Most people spend their lives living from the middle. They focus on the process, the waiting, the uncertainty, and the circumstances that seem to stand between them and what they desire. They constantly ask questions like, when will it happen? How will it happen? What if it never happens? These questions keep them emotionally attached to the absence of what they want. Instead of experiencing the feeling of fulfillment, they remain trapped in the feeling of waiting. They continue looking for evidence that their desire is on its way, not realizing that their constant search is often a sign that they still believe it is missing. Living from the end means stepping beyond that state of waiting and mentally occupying the reality where your desire has already been fulfilled. Imagine for a moment that there is nothing left to chase. Imagine that the person you desire already sees you as important, valuable, and irreplaceable. Imagine that you already occupy a special place in their life. If that were true, how would you feel today? Would you be constantly checking your phone? Would you be analyzing every message? Would you be worrying about competition or rejection? Probably not. You would feel relaxed. You would feel secure. You would feel confident. You would move through your day with a sense of certainty rather than anxiety. That emotional state is the key. Living from the end is not about pretending something has happened when it has not. It is about embodying the emotional state you would naturally experience if it had already happened. Many people believe they need physical proof before they can feel secure. They think confidence comes after success. They think happiness comes after the relationship arrives. They think peace comes after circumstances change. But if you study highly successful and emotionally fulfilled people, you will notice something interesting. They often embody the feelings of success, confidence, and certainty before external results appear. They think differently before their circumstances change. They believe differently before evidence arrives. They live as though the outcome they desire is already part of their identity. This is why their actions, decisions, and energy naturally align with the reality they wish to create. When it comes to relationships, living from the end means releasing the identity of someone who is waiting to be chosen. Instead, you adopt the identity of someone who already knows they are chosen. There is a significant difference between these two states. The person waiting to be chosen feels anxious, uncertain, and dependent on external validation. The person who already feels chosen is calm, confident, and emotionally secure. One operates from lack, while the other operates from fulfillment. One constantly asks for proof, while the other naturally expects positive outcomes. Your dominant state influences how you experience life and how you respond to circumstances. One of the greatest mistakes people make is allowing temporary appearances to control their emotional state. If they receive attention, they feel good. If they do not, they feel discouraged. Their confidence rises and falls based on external events. Living from the end requires a different approach. It means remaining faithful to your chosen state, regardless of temporary circumstances. It means understanding that appearances can change, and that your inner state does not need to fluctuate with every event. The person who lives from the end remains grounded in their belief, even when results are not immediately visible. They trust the process because they have already accepted the outcome internally. This does not mean ignoring reality or avoiding practical action. It means refusing to let fear dictate your identity. It means choosing to see yourself as worthy, valuable, and desirable, even when circumstances have not yet caught up with your vision. It means waking up every day and asking yourself, how would the version of me who is already loved and appreciated think, feel, and behave? Then you begin embodying those qualities now. You become more confident. You become more grateful. You become more focused on enjoying your life rather than obsessing over outcomes. Ironically, it is often when people stop desperately seeking validation that they become most attractive to others. Living from the end also frees you from emotional dependency. Instead of believing that another person controls your happiness, you recognize that your emotional state originates within you. You stop placing your peace in someone else's hands. You stop waiting for permission to feel worthy. You stop postponing joy until circumstances change. This creates a powerful sense of freedom because you are no longer living as a victim of external conditions. You become the creator of your internal experience. And when your internal experience changes, your external experience often begins to reflect that transformation. As you continue on this journey, remember that being chosen begins with choosing yourself. Before anyone else can consistently reflect your value, you must first recognize it within yourself. Before someone else can prioritize you, you must stop abandoning your own worth. Before you can fully receive love, you must believe that you are worthy of receiving it. Living from the end means embracing that truth every single day. It means carrying yourself with the confidence of someone who knows their value. It means thinking from fulfillment rather than longing. It means trusting that what you desire is possible and allowing yourself to experience the emotions associated with that reality now. The moment you stop living as though your happiness is somewhere in the future and start embodying it in the present, everything begins to change. You become more peaceful, more confident, and more magnetic. You stop chasing because you no longer feel incomplete. You stop doubting because you have established certainty within yourself. And as you continue to live from the end of being chosen, you discover a profound truth. The person who truly believes they are worthy of love, attention, and appreciation naturally creates a life that reflects those beliefs. That is the power of living from the end. That is the power of becoming the version of yourself who already has what they desire.